Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for Lifetime's Adoption Q&A for Hopeful Adoptive Parents. My name is Kim King, and I'm one of the Adoptive Family Coordinators here. Our co-host is Libby Murray as well, one of our outreach coordinators who works closely with birth moms too. So we are excited to be with you guys this evening, and thank you so much for taking some time out of your probably very busy week considering that it is December. We appreciate you guys taking the time out and spending some moments with us to further your adoption education and come that much closer to moving forward into your adoption plans. As you know, our website is lifetimeadoption.com, and our free application is available there. If you've not taken that first step, I would highly recommend filling out our free application online at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. And if you have questions and you've not applied yet, you are welcome to email apply, A-P-P-L-Y, at lifetimeadoption.com, and our applications coordinator will direct your question to a coordinator who can start to assist you step by step. My email address is kim@lifetimeadoption.com, so if anything comes up this evening and we weren't really fully able to answer your question, maybe due to the more specific nature of your question, you are welcome to email that to me if you do not already have a coordinator, and I will either help you myself or assign you to a coordinator. And also, if you have questions that you'd rather talk with us about, feel free to give us a call. The number is 1-800-923-6784, and you can also take a moment and breeze on over to Facebook. If you are on Facebook, I would encourage you to follow us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/open.adoption. There are always wonderful conversations going on. No better way to stay in the loop on a day-to-day basis than through Facebook. So Libby, thank you for getting everything set up for us tonight.
Oh, well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to see so many people settling in because actually, well, Kim, you weren't on it last night because we were saving you for tonight, but we had an adoption Q&A yesterday for just lifetime families, and I'm just always reminded whenever we have these webinars, they're really made by the people who attend. We were able to talk about some things, and Heather, my co-host, she prompted everyone to give tips that worked for them to get them over the hurdles that we were talking about at the moment, the topics we were talking about. And so other adoptive families chimed in with what worked for them, what helped them, what was the best solution for them, and we were able to share that. And so not only do your questions help us know what information you need and to better allow us to help you prepare for your adoption in the future, but also your questions and comments are helping the other families. So I really want to encourage you tonight, if you have a question and you're thinking, oh no, that's dumb, or maybe they've talked about that already, just type it in anyways, because chances are good that somebody else is thinking the same thing and they need to hear it also. And, you know, if it is related to you more specifically, like we know that not every single family has the same scenario, the same situation, or challenges or victories when it comes to adoption planning. So if there's something that is related to you, Kim and I will let you know on the call if it's something that we would better address one-on-one with you later, or we may try and get you an answer right here tonight by typing with you too. So I just am glad to see everyone here, and we're excited that Christmas is around the corner, and that, Kim, one of the things on my heart is just it doesn't seem to matter what phase adoptive parents to be are in. Every Christmas, I think, just highlights the fact that we want this to happen. We want to add a child to our lives, and that I would bet most of you on the call tonight would agree that it's pretty hard to shake adoption from your mind lately as you buy gifts for everyone and talk about parties and planning and stuff. So I think coming to a webinar is a great place to just kind of vent that out. You get to purposely focus on adoption planning and research, and maybe doing this tonight will allow you to free up some brain space this weekend as you're preparing your cookies and getting everything ready. So, so we have a question here, and I wanted to address this. We don't get to talk about this very much, Kim, but it was actually more of a logistic webinar question, and it said, what should I be seeing on my screen? And if you're looking at your monitor and you just see Kim and my faces in tiny little pictures. That is what you should be seeing, because right now we're not presenting a graphic. The Q&As, we don't always know what we're going to get to talk about, which is why they're kind of fun. So we don't always have screenshots or visuals to show, but that is also the place where if we do show something on the screen, that'll be where you see it. So I appreciate that question, because there were probably other people wondering, well, is this right? Did I have it set up right? So yes, you do. As long as you can hear us, you're good.
And you know what I like about that is that when we have webinars that are planned as far as discussion, bullet points, or interviews where we're sharing pictures of the adoptive parents and their baby, maybe even birth mom photo, when families are not able to join us in the online format, they can always go back to the website later at adoptionteleconference.com and play it from their computer and see the pictures that were shown and the slides that were shown during those kinds of webinars. Libby, there was a really good question that a family asked me yesterday, a future adoptive mom. She is getting ready to take the next steps into her adoption, and she had asked, well, this might seem silly, but what about naming the baby? Like, how does that even work? So I was just sharing with her some of the ideas of how, other families have worked out the name of their baby, but I wanted her to have that confidence that the bottom line is, as adoptive parents, you have all legal rights to your child, and you get the final say in what your name is. But how things transpire in leading up to what you decide is the final say in your baby's name may be very different depending on maybe a name that birth mom had thought might be helpful in the naming of the baby. And I suggested to her, since they hadn't picked out any names yet, I think they just didn't really feel like they should take those steps to pick out names and get their heart set on something, not knowing logistically how it would work, But I recommended that she pick out 2 or 3 names per gender, 2 or 3 boy names, 2 or 3 girl names, because you just never know if the baby's going to be a boy or a girl, and you might get a last minute, drop in the lap, and you might need to have some names handy. So I recommended that they pick out a few for each, and then if birth mom asks what names they had in mind, they can maybe let her pick from those, because that way you know that you're suggesting names that you already love, So, Libby, what's your take on that?
We always say, don't make the name a deal breaker. So while we understand that naming your baby is such a personal thing, and I would admit that probably men and women alike, but certainly I know as a woman and having many female friends and mom friends, we grow up, we name our dolls, we name our dogs, we name frogs we catch in the yard, we name teddy bears, whatever. So sometimes the name becomes such a root of your dream that it gets a little bit hard to focus on, okay, what's really important? Is a name really something that I'm going to say no to a child over? And so to keep things in perspective, the flip side of that is that I get asked by birth mothers a lot, too, how does the name work out? Will the adoptive parents name my baby, and will that name go on the birth certificate? So a lot of times she actually appreciates that you've already put thought into that, and that you want to name this baby something that makes them included into your family. So to her, naming the baby is just as personal as it is to you. She may say, have you thought about names? I'm having a boy. And some families get kind of nervous, like, is she trying to tell us she wants to name the baby? Or, all you have to do is say, yeah, we've thought about names, and do you want to hear them? And she will probably say, yeah. And it's just amazing, Kim. You and I have both heard several times on webinars how often it happens when the adoptive parents say, well, actually, we've liked the name, Michael Scott or something. And she will say, oh, my gosh, I was thinking of Michael as a middle name. I love that name, too. So you may find that naming this baby is actually a bonding asset, a bonding practice, a bonding milestone as you get to know your child's birth mother. The other side of this is I always love going back to this one story a few years ago where the birth mother said, I want to name my baby because it's her right. It's her baby. When that baby's born, she hasn't signed papers saying that baby is your baby yet. She has the right to name her baby. And the adoptive parents were thinking, oh my gosh, our match has been going so well. How come this hasn't come up before? Does this mean she wants to parent? I mean, they were taking it like a whole serious degree south, And we slowed them down. We said, well, did you ask her what the name was? And they said, well, no, we didn't. We just started panicking. And they went back and they said, so you mentioned you had a name picked out that you wanted to name, this little girl. And she said, yeah. She said, I've really been thinking a lot about how we've come together through adoption and that there are 3 sides to my baby's adoption. There's you and me and her. And I want to name her Trinity because of the 3 sides. Oh. And when they heard that, they were like, how could we say no to that? I mean, it's just beautiful that she thought about this so much. And so to them, they all worked it out, and I think they chose the middle name for the baby. And so, but, let's say you're adopting an older child, maybe a baby that's a couple months old or 1 year old or something. That child may already have a name. Everybody seems to have their own personal opinions about whether or not it's appropriate to rename a child, but it's definitely not a topic you should be afraid of talking about with your child's birth mom. So she will likely be touched to know that you have thought of a name already. But if you're one of those people that's saying, we don't even want to talk about names until we know boy, girl, when this baby's coming or what, that's okay too. So don't, it's kind of like the nursery, right, Kim? I mean, it's up to you whether or not you want to have a diaper bag packed or have a nursery set up or buy clothes or pick out names. Those are all very personal elements that every adoptive parent's going to need to decide in their own time and what's right for them. But I love the name topic just because I think it's one of those things that people put a lot of fear around. Is that going to be an awkward conversation? And then in hindsight, I've never heard someone say, oh my gosh, our adoption went south when we started talking names because she was so stubborn. Usually what they hear is, she just loves her baby so much, and all she wanted to know was what she should start calling this baby. Sometimes it's just a very sweet sentiment that she wants to just identify her baby, as any pregnant woman usually does. So don't be alarmed if she says, if you thought about names, and don't be afraid to talk with her about what she wants. And Kim, I mean, we've talked about it before, but I know there's also the logistics side, which is if she chooses to name her baby, I mean, Heather likes to go to the extreme, if she chooses to name her baby like Sunshine Rainbows, and you're thinking, okay, Sunshine Rainbows, Smith isn't exactly what we had in mind. You just say, what a beautiful baby, and you do get the opportunity to put the name you choose for your baby on the birth certificate. But you may want to find out, well, what led you to choose that name? I mean, just make it a part of how you're getting to know her, because she may have chosen that because she loves sunshine and rainbows, and then you can talk about, well, let's name her, Rebecca Sunny, and we'll keep part of your name in there. And it's such a personal thing, but it's not something to get all hung up on just because for 20 years you've been dreaming about naming your baby after your great-grandmother.
And in adoptions, usually there are 2 birth certificates. So there's the original initial one with birth mom's information and the name she has put down. Whatever name she happens to fill out in there is the name that will be on that. And if you hadn't previously discussed it, then she'll just either ask you what to put down, or she'll put down what she had in mind. And sometimes that can be, for a birth mom, one of those precious moments where they're able to give something, even though it may not last forever, they're able to give something to the child as a mother. And then, when the adoption takes place legally, then you'll be able to have the birth certificate you'll actually use for your child with the name that you'll be putting on there. So
Right.
like Libby said, I think it's really important to just take it step by step, see how birth mom feels, but don't make it the most important thing, like a deal-breaking type of thing, because after all, this is, an adoption where the baby fits everything you said you're looking for. You meet everything she's looking for. Baby is going to be born or is already born, and you're ready to move forward, so you're that, close to everything coming to fruition. And just know that you have the final say in the name anyway.
Absolutely. And there's so many topics kind of around that birth certificate, because what you brought to mind for me, Kim, was how many times I've spoken with birth mothers who are either at the hospital in labor or just thinking about that day down the road. And sometimes they have said, well, gosh, this just might make it easier if I just put their names on the birth certificate. And I'm usually telling the birth mother, don't just talk with the attorney about what you should put down, because you don't want to compromise anything with the legal work later. And really, I mean, nothing is going to take away her role in bringing her baby to your family. So there's no reason for her to just falsify the birth certificate to begin with, because that might complicate things. So where I'm coming from this is because she's usually thinking, how can I make this easy for the adoptive parents?
Yeah.
And so, when you hear stories, or people start, you may even hear next week as you're going to Christmas parties and New Year's parties, people might say, oh, but I've heard, well, this and that you can just say, actually open adoption gives us the opportunity to talk about the name and talk about how things go at the hospital, and it's not just one way. So arm yourself with truth, and don't make decisions out of fear or stereotypes. It's really the best way to just pursue any adoption plan, no matter the type.
I agree.
We had a good question here, Kim, about, let's see here. Is it we're just starting the research phase and looking into adoption? We would like to hear your feedback with regard to the overall health of the infants that your adopted families have adopted, particularly with regard to incidents of fetal alcohol syndrome. I think that's a great question. We don't hear a lot anymore. I think maybe, honestly, I praise you for asking this, because I think sometimes people are afraid to just say it. But, I mean, Kim, in my experience with birth mothers, there's maybe minor cigarette use. Like, most of the women calling us have not been drinking excessively, have not been stoned out of their mind for 9 months.
Right.
They could easily, if there's alcohol involved, it's usually a circumstance that many women could fall into, which was, I happened to be at a party, and then a couple weeks later I missed my period and found out I'm pregnant. Oh, I must have drank during this pregnancy.
Yeah.
Or some women don't know the first couple months, 2 or 3 months that they're pregnant, and they may have had a glass of wine or a couple beers or a cocktail here and there or something. But most of the women we're working with have delivered healthy newborns. And
yes,
I always love this because it brings us to the opportunity to talk about the difference between our adoptions and what may be going on in the state system with foster care. Because for those of you listening tonight, as you begin your research and as you learn more about which direction to take, it also helps to put yourself in a birth mother's shoes. And it's hard at first because you're thinking about what you want and the direction you need to go to have a safe and successful adoption. But to put yourself in a birth mother's shoes and realize that if you were getting drunk all the time or drinking excessively throughout a pregnancy, you may not even be in the right state of mind to make an adoption plan intentfully. Intentionally, I'm not sure which word that goes there.
Intentionally, right. Purposefully.
So,
yeah.
Right. So chances are good that those high risk babies for fetal alcohol, or the real heavy drug exposure, a lot of times those mothers aren't in a state of mind to make a conscious choice, and their choice will be removed from them by the state. Usually CPS will just take those babies when they find out that they tested positive for alcohol or drugs.
Yes, and I was actually just reading up on this this week. I had looked up fetal alcohol. I just Googled, fetal alcohol syndrome and just read, a description of it because it's not something we've seen here in our program. So even though I've been working with Lifetime for many years, I'm not familiar with fetal alcohol syndrome, and I have asked parents throughout the years, who maybe work in the education system with special needs children or social workers who work in the foster system to shed light on their take, what are their observations. So I've been familiar with what it is, but not through our program in seeing babies born here through Lifetime with fetal alcohol syndrome. But I was reading a description of it online, and if I'm incorrect in my accounting here, I'm not a medical professional, but it said something like only 0.02, like basically 2 out of 1,000 are likely to have. That's like the statistic on how common fetal alcohol syndrome is. So I think that let's put that into perspective, and that made sense to me that, okay, well then what are the odds? We're going to have one of those 2 out of 1,000 babies here in our program, right? And have the birth mom actually reach out to purposefully make a voluntary adoption plan. So it's just not something that we see. It doesn't mean you don't see it in adoption in general, but since we only work with private, domestic, voluntary relinquishments, it's just not something we see. I would say that it could be more of a concern with international, where, other cultures may have different statistics, or with foster, like you were saying, Libby, because that's part of what led the child to be removed from the care of the biological parent in the first place.
Right, and we had a couple follow-up questions to that. One brings to mind a birth mother I worked with early in my years with Lifetime, and she called in her 7th month, so she was pretty far along, and she was about 19 or so, but she had fallen into a crowd. Her ex-boyfriend was in a gang. He dealt drugs. She had a serious addiction problem. She called me in tears because she was starting to get clean. Her mother had taken her back in. And, this is just one example of the severe, once-in-a-while cases that we hear. But she called me in tears. Basically, she thought there was a monster growing inside of her because of all the alcohol, because of all the drugs she had taken during this pregnancy. And so she was beating herself up emotionally, thinking, I've ruined my baby. I feel so horrible that I was just so out of it for so long, and now I'm sober, and I want to do the right thing for my baby, and I know that I can't get clean and raise a newborn at the same time. I want the best for this baby, but she was so worried that because of her behaviors that no one would accept her baby, that no one would love her baby and take him in. And there happened to be the family that she chose. Actually, I think she went through 1 or 2 families first. And in those cases, when it's real severe, out of the norm, we are cautious about which families to present to her because, again, our goal is to see you succeed. And so we don't want to call you and say, well, hey, we know you told us that you're not comfortable with this, but, here's this baby. We don't want to put you in a position where you're feeling like you have to turn down a baby. That's an awful thing to do to someone. It's like saying, oh, do you want a 2-legged dog that's going to need, medical care? And you're thinking, I can barely make rent every month, but I feel awful telling you, no, I can't take in this dog, So, think about if that happened with a child that you're longing for, to have to say no to that. We don't want to put you in that position. So we're cautious about which families to call, and before we even present them to that birth mother, to talk with them, give them a little heads up, hey, we're working with this. This is all we know right now. And so the first couple of families we called, they were not comfortable with the level of use that she had gone through. The third family I called, they actually told me, and we had known this prior, because by the time they come to us on their application, we don't always get to know everything about the whole journey that's led you to Lifetime. But they actually had said, you know what, last year we had said yes to an international adoption of a little boy with very significant special needs. And so we know that we could handle whatever this little boy may go through. And so they said yes to her because in their hearts they had already prepared for that. While it was okay that other people weren't prepared for it because it was their baby. And I will say to this day, the last I heard from that family, he was actually healthy and on track. So, you know, he was protected in utero, which is another side of things, you know, that if you would consider any substance exposure, read up on it, talk with doctors, get actual research in your head so that you're not just going based off of what you've heard, but you're going off of what you know, because there are some substances, some exposures that the baby's actually protected because of the way the pregnancy works to protect the baby's life. And so sometimes it's affecting the mother more than it's affecting the baby. Other times there may be substances that are more toxic for a baby. So just educate yourself and then make decisions based on what you know you would say yes to and what you know you'd say no to.
You know, that makes me think, too, about just nutrition, you know, in general during a pregnancy. Oftentimes people don't know that the body will pull from the nutrients already stored in the pregnant woman's body to provide for the baby first. That's why if someone doesn't have healthy nutrition during pregnancy, they themselves may become malnutritioned, but the baby is healthy.
Right, exactly.
It's really interesting.
So the other side of this, too, is we had a great question, and it, you know, it's like, I mean, Kim, you and I have been doing this for, well, I think more than 10 years if you combine it. But we have so many stories, and so, like, this just brings to mind all these beautiful birth mothers that I've worked with in the past. But this question was great because it said, well, what if she said she did not use, and at the birth it's evident that there were drugs used during the pregnancy, or even during the prenatal records? What if something comes out? You know, another side of this is the possibility that she said, I did use, like, let's say that she called me in her 3rd month and she said, well, yeah, I was smoking pot a couple months ago or something, but I'm not using now. But then, you know, maybe at her 6-month sonogram or something, we get records from the doctor that says tested positive for marijuana, then we might say, okay, I thought you said you'd stopped. So what if something shows up that you weren't aware of? Now, first, I just want to say our experience is these mothers are usually very honest. It's not very common where we're just totally surprised. So just know that usually she really respects your position as the adoptive parent to be, and she wants to give her baby the benefit of disclosure so that people can decide if they want to embrace this child into their lives, so that she's not spinning her wheels, so she's actually making a solid plan for her baby, not just hoping they'll go through.
Right.
But if something happens, we always say, you know, if things change at the hospital and it turns into a situation that you would have said no to begin with, that's okay. What we usually ask is that you stay in communication with us, with the coordinator that's been helping you through that match, and that you allow us the opportunity to bring another family in so that that adoption, so that that baby doesn't go to foster care, so that that birth mother's not let down, but we can find a way to help you navigate that. This rarely ever happens. For those of you listening and thinking, oh my gosh, how would we even do that? It doesn't happen that much, so don't panic.
Right.
But like
what you said, well, we work on the honor system primarily with birth moms, especially at the start of the adoption planning when we may not have medical records. At the point where she is ready to go forward into a match with you as the specific adoptive parents for her baby, medical records may be in transit, or she may have little to no medical records. But that doesn't mean that she's not telling us everything, or it doesn't mean the baby isn't healthy. Yeah, so we hardly ever have birth moms using certain substances that most families would be concerned about. And like Libby was saying, she doesn't want to undermine the stability of her baby's future. She wants a family that's on board with exactly everything that's going on. But go ahead, Libby. I'd rather hear your story than what I already know I have to say.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Go ahead.
Everybody's probably like, please, Kim, talk. Libby's talking a lot. But one of the times this did happen was I had worked on a match with a family who previously told us, no, we would not accept a situation where marijuana was used. And this birth mother, they had been matched with her, I think, 2 months. And then we got some prenatal records from her doctor, and we noticed that she had tested positive for marijuana. And so we talked to her about that, and she confessed, yes, I did, and yes, I came up positive. And I had to call the family and tell them, you know, hey, things have changed. What do you want to do? How do you want to move forward? And they said, can we think about it overnight? And I said yes, because the baby's birth wasn't like right around the corner, so they had a little time to get their mind in order. They prayed, they thought, they researched, they talked. They called in the morning and they said, you know, we really believe this is our baby, and we're going to keep moving forward. Now, there's been other times when families have said, we wouldn't have been presented to that situation to begin with, and we need to back out. So either answer is fine. Our expectations at Lifetime are really the same for birth mothers and adoptive parents. That you be honest with us, that you communicate what's going on with you, whether you're just researching Lifetime or you're already well into the program or moving through a match, that you don't need to feel like you need to hide or censor the status of your progress with things that you need to get done or your questions. So, Kim, I mean, you work so much with families on the front end that are just researching, that are coming into Lifetime, and I know that there's sort of this like almost job application, like interview kind of hypersensitivity that goes on with some adoptive parents. Like they come in thinking we've got to put on a really good front and not let them know that we have these sensitive questions because we want them to accept us. But we would rather you just tell us where you're at, because we have answers, and if we don't have the answers, we'll get them for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think logically it does make sense that when you're going in to be, for someone to decide, well, can we offer to help you with your adoption or not? I think that does kind of make people feel a little bit nervous, at least the ones who realize that's what's going on. But I think that most families I talk with, by the time they've gotten to know us a little bit, they filled out their application, they've listened to some of our audio programs, you know, maybe they've even read the book Called to Adoption. Usually by then they're pretty at ease, like feeling real comfortable, just knowing, hey, this is a conversation. We're just trying to find out what your needs are, what your expectations are, what you have in mind, so we can be very open with you in return and saying, well, you know, if these are your specific needs, it's going to be really hard for you to adopt. Or, okay, these are your needs. That's totally doable for us. We would love to assist with your adoption. You know, or, well, where are these needs coming from? Where are these concerns or limitations coming from, so that we can help you maybe get some more facts so that you feel more confident in broadening in some of the areas. So it's usually for families, when we're starting to get to know them, it's a work in progress. When it comes to answering all the questions about your preferences, I just can't say how important it is. I can't say enough how important it is for you to just be very open with us in that conversation from the very beginning, because not only does that give us the intel as to whether or not, you know, we can decide whether or not we can be successful for you and your adoption, but it also, moving forward, helps us to present you to birth moms that you want to be chosen by, so that you're never in one of those positions like Libby was talking about earlier, where a birth mom is excited about you and you have to say no. Now, obviously, as she is, you know, as Libby has shared, if there are extenuating circumstances that come out as you're matched or the baby is born and now this baby doesn't fit within the preferences you had already decided, then we don't expect you to move forward. You have the option to, but we don't expect you to continue in that specific match. Handle it like Libby shared, and then we'll come back to, you know, to Lifetime's program and be presenting you to new birth moms going forward. So we want you to be successful, as she shared, and have an adoption that you feel completely joyful about and not apprehensive and worried about, because of the foundation that you've already set, an open conversation about what your preferences truly are, and only saying yes to preferences that if you're a mom and a dad adopting together, a married couple, then obviously you're both in agreement that you're okay with that, whatever question it is, whether it's being willing to send letters and photos to the birth mom throughout the years, or if it's, are we open to a baby that's 2 or 3 months old already? And speaking of a baby that may already be born, what is the process usually like with that? I know almost all of our adoptions are newborn, but Libby, can you kind of take us through what to expect if a baby is already born? Say a baby is like 8 weeks old or something, and that's when the birth mom, is ready to choose adoption.
Yeah, sure. And actually, this is a great tie-in, because as you were speaking, I was thinking about some of the questions that are coming in right now about just, can you talk more about what Lifetime services are? And I think probably after New Year, Kim, we're going to need to do another. We've done one recently, but I think we need to do another webinar where we strictly focus on the phases, the steps.
Yes.
Because that can easily take up a whole webinar. And to talk about Lifetime's program specifically. But Kim, I think you have don't you have a special audio link from that? You can always email us. If you're interested in that previous webinar, you can always email Kim, and we can get that link to you too. But these answers, I hope, are giving you an idea of the services we walk through. So we're screening birth mothers. We're introducing you to her. Based on a mutual fit that she's told us she's looking for a family like you, and you're looking for an opportunity like she's presenting with her baby. And then the other side of this too, honestly, sort of the big umbrella answer is we hold your hand every step of the way. There is not one phase of Lifetime where we are saying, good luck with that, tell us how it goes.
Awesome.
So we have home study referrals, attorney referrals. We're working with the attorney, working with the hospital. We're working with your birth mother long before you've even been matched with her, providing counseling for her. We have peer support for her, sending her clothes if she needs clothes that fit her tummy, or if she needs some groceries and things like that. So there's support going on for her. And the other side of this is that the reason why we're emphasizing communicate to us and be open and honest is because if you are out of touch with us, we can't help you because we're not aware of what's been going on. And so this is why sometimes my hands are tied. Like, I will get phone calls from adoptive parents working with other agencies, and maybe they have matches, but now they're kind of in a weird bind because they're not getting the support or the answers they need with their organization, and they're calling around to other places to try and get advice or moving forward. But when we're not familiar with what's been going on from the beginning of your match, it's hard to give you advice on direction. So one of the reasons that we want to be so involved is so that we have the best answers, the best support for both you and your child's birth mother. So really that's a huge part of what Lifetime's going to do for you, is when you are matched, that we're not just saying, here's a birth mother, then your next step is to contact an attorney. We'd love to see photos when the baby's born, tell us how it goes. We don't do that. We are every step walking you through this. So when it comes to even a child that's already born, sometimes the answers to those, I feel like it's harder to give specific advice because not only is every adoption so unique, but especially when the child is already born, the answers change because, pregnancy is a little easier to predict, how to navigate that match. But when, let's say, Kim, let's say that a woman calls us tonight and says, I have a 2-month-old and I'm thinking about adoption. I want to start looking for adopted parents. So in that situation, when her baby's already born, I am asking her, of course you can take as much time as you need to decide, and it's never too late for adoption. So I'm glad that you called tonight and that you're thinking about your resources out there and the options for you and your baby. But then I will ask her, how fast are you thinking you want things to move forward? And if she's still just more in the, well, I'm just thinking about it, I'm not really sure yet, then that's good for us to know too, because we can get her more resources, counseling, support, help her decide which direction is best. We can even help her look for resources in her area in case she's really just feeling like adoption is not what she wants to do, but she just feels stuck. And then the other side of this is, a lot of times the women calling that already have a child that's born, they want things to go pretty quick. So to some of the adoptive parents, it might feel like a last-minute situation just because you hear about her on Monday and by Friday you're, making travel arrangements to go meet her. So that can always vary a little bit, but the same steps still apply. So whether she's pregnant or that baby's already here, we're giving you as much information as we have, and we're fostering that relationship between you and her, because that is the ongoing connection that's going to be lifelong. And so you may still have the opportunity to move through a match with her in the same way as if she was pregnant with, 6 weeks left till her due date, and helping you coordinate attorneys. And a lot of times, too, when the child's already here, sometimes it makes things a little bit easier to find out logistically. So we may even do a little homework before you're even contacted about the opportunity. So we may have already talked with attorneys, like this birth mother lives in Louisiana. She's thinking about a family who lives in Kansas. How will this, what's the best way to help her move forward with this? And the attorney might give us some advice. Well, this needs to happen, or we'll go this direction or something. So by the time we call you, we may even have more information just because her situation allows. But, it's so different, Kim, because every match is unique. And truly, I think that's because it's just a reflection of the fact that you're bringing unique individuals together for the right fit, not just any fit.
And there's another question that I would say is pretty normal to wonder about when we're talking about a baby that's already born. Since we don't work with foster adoption, usually parents want to know, well, where's the baby been all this time? Is the baby going to have a problem bonding with me? I mean, I haven't seen us have any cases where a baby has had problems bonding with their new parents. Have you? I haven't.
No. A good thing, this is what I love, that we don't really get to talk about very much because, Kim, you and I are not home study providers. We're not social workers that complete home studies specifically. But it always, when that question comes up, it always brings to mind, I worked on a match with a sibling group, and actually I was so excited because the adoptive mom posted photos of the oldest, and the other day I was thinking, I cannot believe that she is that old now, because when I saw a picture of her, she was 2, and now she is nearly 10. And it's just amazing to see how happy she is, how adjusted she is. But the sibling group was a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a 7-month-old. So 3 babies in diapers. And the birth mother was young, and she was doing the best she could, but she was limited in her resources, her time, just everything. And so she made an adoption plan for all 3 with one family, because we do prioritize keeping siblings together. When the adoptive parents found out about this, they called their home study provider, and the home study provider said, okay, great, we have extra support, like we have extra steps to do when you're adopting a child that's already born. So they help you with some of the bonding. They may follow up more often than if you just brought a newborn home. And they may even offer some additional classes in your area or resources or support groups to help you navigate those steps. And in this situation, what I remember is just because of the sheer circumstances involved, where there was a 2-year-old who, was potty training, but, 2-year-olds are a little bit more independent than certainly a a baby, but then she had the baby that she had on special formula because he had stomach issues and stuff like that. The middle child, the 1-year-old, he actually, he needed a little bit of extra support just for him. So the oldest and the youngest, actually adjusted quite well, but the middle child, because he'd kind of been a little bit overlooked because birth mom was trying to juggle 3 kids under 2. So the oldest one, she'd been with the longest and kind of adjusted, that child just adjusted because she'd been there a while, but then the youngest obviously had more needs than the 1-year-old. So the home study provider helped the adoptive parents catch him up, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all kinds of ways to answer that, and you can't always anticipate it. If there are, like, let's go to worst case scenario. If we know that this child may already have some personality disorders or some struggles that limit their ability to bond, like if there's autism involved or something like that, again, we're going to be talking with families and making sure that we're presenting this birth mother with families who would say yes, and not families that feel like, oh gosh, I've got to back out of this now. But again, most of our adoptions are with pregnant women who give birth and want their baby to leave the hospital with the adoptive family.
Yes.
Kim, I wanted to talk about this one question because it was actually about our very first step with Lifetime, which is applying, and I love this question. She said, how long will Lifetime hold a place after our application is accepted before we would have to contract? We've been hesitant to apply because we're waiting to get our finances coordinated. I love this question because we also can tie this in with another question that came in, which is, do I have to have my home study completed before I apply or before I start with Lifetime? And so, Kim, when families are getting all those things together, I mean, would you encourage them to hold off applying, or would you recommend that they apply while they're working on getting that stuff together?
Well, the familiar faces of our audience are probably already thinking what I'm about to say. They already know the answer. You're at the top of the class if your answer matches this. I would recommend going ahead and applying because it's never too early to start exploring and planning. You're not committing yourselves to a certain specific time frame. I think what we're wanting to know is once we get to a certain point with understanding your adoption needs and we have decided we can offer to assist with your adoption, we'll want to know what your plans are, what your intentions are, and accommodate you within the openings we have available month to month in our program. So I would say if you are anywhere under a year, year and a half, maybe 2 years at the most, from being ready to fully activate and actively pursue your adoption with a program like Lifetime, then it's not too early to apply. I think that it is a great opportunity if you are in the early stages of discussing adoption to start developing a relationship with your adoption professional. Start developing a connection with Lifetime because that's going to lead to even more confidence as you take those next steps moving forward deeper and deeper into your adoption. So I recommend just going ahead and filling it out, and you can always tell us, hey, we decided to take another direction, or we are going to put things on hold right now until we finish school, or whatever it may be. Then we always have ways to assist you at the pace that you're comfortable with. Now, if you're thinking, well, actually, we've been trying infertility treatments for 3 years, and we are ready to start, or 3 months, we are ready to start with adoption. We're excited, we are both on board, and we just want to have a fresh start. Then obviously fill out the application. We usually have a reply to any application within 1 to 5 business days. So it's not something like a long drawn-out process where we make you wait forever as to whether or not we can move forward to the next step. And so we can start to get to know you a little bit better through our phone conference. And if we're all on the same page, then we can show you how to expedite your process and get starting to be presented to birth moms. Here at Lifetime, and some families this is a new concept. We actually can present you to birth moms while your home study is in progress. Most families who are brand new to adoption will start their home study at around the same time that they're starting the program with us. Not applying, but actually starting the program. Because I think first you need to know who's going to help you with your adoption, and then you know what type of home study you need to get and who you need to hire. Because some places are pretty picky about who you can use for your home study, such as they might insist that they are the ones doing your home study and won't accept it from someone else. So it's definitely helpful if you can choose what direction you're taking first. So say you decide, well, we're going to be working with Lifetime, and Lifetime has said, yes, we would love to assist you. Then, of course, we'll give you our advice on what timing to keep in mind and what to look for in a home study provider. And we actually provide referrals to our contracted Lifetime families. So it's totally normal to contact your home study provider at the same time as taking the first steps into your program as a newly contracted Lifetime family. And what we can do is have you create a temporary profile that we can start presenting to birth moms that are maybe 2 months out from their due date. So that way, by the time the baby is born, obviously your home study would be done because it takes like 6 to 8 weeks. So we can work on the timing. And then once we have your home study in our hands, we can start presenting you to birth moms due sooner or who already have a baby born, if that's within your preferences, of course.
I totally agree, Kim, and I think to add to that, too, is something you and I were talking about before we got on our webinar tonight, which is, because we want to be successful with every family we bring in, we also look at, the birth mothers that are calling us and the things that they're seeking in families, and we're only able to take in a handful of the families that apply every month. And so one of the patterns I've noticed in my many years with Lifetime is that in January, even February, we get hit hard with applications because everybody makes it through Christmas and they sit down on their couch Christmas night or New Year's Eve night or New Year's Day and they think, yeah, I really want a baby. We need to think about adoption more seriously. Let's take the first step. And we get a lot of applications, and we can't take them all, even if they're amazing. And so sometimes we may work out and say, hey, we have these options where you can be on a wait list or maybe join in a certain program where you have a little extra leeway time to get some things together while you're getting the rest of your finances and your profile and your home study done. And those are certainly all things that we are better able to communicate with you when we know more about what you're looking for and your specific needs with your adoption. So I would say if you're on the call tonight and you're thinking, well, I've been waiting to apply because I want to be completely ready to start before I apply anywhere, I would say scrap that. Just apply, because it will allow you to better understand what our program offers you so that you know how to prepare. How are you going to know exactly what finances to get together if you don't know what an adoption under your search criteria with Lifetime will look like? So I love our application process because it's free. And it doesn't obligate you to have to move forward. And like Kim said, it really gives you the freedom to keep pulling things together. So if you need more time, sometimes families do that. You can also get your foot in the door and know that there are resources that sometimes we have only available to people who have been qualified by their application, but they're still getting things together. So we may have resources that fit your needs that don't apply to the general public. So it doesn't hurt you. It actually will help you learn more about not only about Lifetime, but also just about preparing for adoption in general. So I think to get your foot in the door now, because then you will be ahead of all those people that want to wait until after New Year, and then they're going to have to wait even longer. You could potentially get in now, and maybe by New Year's end, have had a phone consultation where you're actually getting even more specific information about how Lifetime could help your adoption needs, not just how we're able to talk about a lot of the general stuff tonight because we're addressing so many people with so many different goals. So apply. It doesn't obligate you. It's free. I wanted to try and hit on one more question here, Kim, before we wrap up tonight, if that's okay. Oh, we should probably say, I know I typed it in earlier, but if you are thinking about applying, it's super easy to get to our free application online. You can just go to lifetimeadoption.com/apply and fill it out. And actually what I have always loved about our application is that it will bring up things you may not have even thought to research or ask about yet. Or if you're adopting as a couple, that you may not have even had a conversation with each other about, oh yeah, we never even thought about that. Would we? Wouldn't we? How do we want that to go? So the application is also helpful for you interpersonally too. But this question is great, and it was one of our first ones tonight, and I thought we should bring up because we were just talking about budgeting for adoption. This question says, do you have experience with families that have received financial assistance from different ministries and charities out there? If so, can you share a little bit about your experience? I would even love if the people listening tonight, if you parents in the audience have experience with grants or ministry-funded adoption help, if you have any pros or cons or experience on that, feel free to chime in and type in the comments and let us know so we can share with the audience tonight too. But Kim, I know that's one of the things that definitely when families apply, we're better able to help them assess some of those things and whether or not they would help them move forward with Lifetime's program. But I know off the top of my head, I just want to get out there that make sure you understand all the terms of the grant, the help, the program, because we have worked with families in the past where maybe there was maybe a Christian organization that helps with adoption grants, and then they thought, oh great, and they applied and they qualified. Well, then they find out, oh, I can only use this after I finalize, or I can only put this towards legal costs specifically, or I can only put this towards a home study, or whatever it may be. Find out the limitations and the requirements of whatever assistance you're looking at so that you're not surprised later and tied up thinking, oh my gosh, we were going to use that and now we can't even touch it until we're matched or until we have our baby home, so that you know how to best prepare. It may work out. If you get it retroactively, that's not bad. You just need to know how to prepare on the front end. And find out too what kind of proof those organizations may need to reimburse you if that's how their program works. But just know most families are funding adoption using a combination of efforts. So I've never spoken with one family that said across the board they found one organization that just covered everything. They're usually combining things like fundraising, savings, maybe a little bit of loans, and if they qualify or they can find grants or ministries that are helping with that. So they're not just families that have the cash already and they just sign up one day and plunk it down. Most families are combining efforts to work it out. And if I could just, I mean, I hope to get them on a webinar soon, Kim, but there's just one family that keeps standing out in my mind, and they just adopted right before Thanksgiving, but they truly credit just the fact that they felt called to adopt after years of trying to add a baby to their family biologically. They were unsuccessful. They both felt by faith adoption laid on their hearts, and the more they just kept saying yes, the more doors kept opening, and people were just donating to them. And so you may be surprised. Don't be discouraged if you're thinking, oh, I would love to adopt, but how can I? If you know, you'll find a way. If you keep saying yes and you really want to, you will find doors opening. And that looks different for everyone. So I don't say that lightly, thinking, you know, where's your faith? Why aren't you moving forward? It's going to be different for everyone because that's what a testimony is about. It's not about one pat answer. but
Mhm.
but to not be discouraged. Don't let adoption budget and financing hold you back from taking the steps that are going to get you closer. Because like Kim said earlier, even if you apply and you don't yet have the funds to start, say, within 4 weeks, it's okay. Talk with us about that. So we've heard it all. So many families come to us and say, even if you've gone through a worst case scenario, maybe you lost your house.
Mhm.
Maybe there's some situation, maybe you have a lot of student loan debt that hogs up your income and it's hard to qualify for loans. Talk to us. Don't let all the clouds in your head hold you back from researching a call to adopt, because we may have other resources, other answers, other solutions to open that door for you, and even payment options just to help break it down and simplify things too. So, and that's really great advice, I think, for any adoption program. So if you're on the fence about international or private adoption within the U.S., there's still going to be funding involved. Don't let funding hold you back from saying yes to adoption. Just keep pushing forward and finding the answers.
We have one of our actually currently matched families in attendance tonight, and she said, I want to tell everyone thinking about joining, join, join, join. Trust Lifetime. It is a life changer. And that means so much, especially because she's right now in the very heat of her adoption planning. And, that just means so much that she is actually here tonight with us and wanting to share that encouragement with families.
That's wonderful. I love hearing that. And we even have another family that's actually currently waiting to adopt, and they reminded me just now that we don't talk about it a lot anymore, but there are still employer adoption benefits out there through the Dave Thomas Foundation. And so even if your employer doesn't currently offer adoption help, financial help, you can go to Dave Thomas Foundation website and get a packet to present to your payroll or HR department, because it really doesn't cost them anything to offer the program. It only costs them when it's used. So most employers don't even know it exists. And then they find out about it. It's a tax write-off for the company, and they get to help you, which creates positive work environment. I mean, it really has a lot of benefits to an employer. It's just most employers don't know it's offered. But even if they only helped with $500 or $1,000, I mean, that could cover getting your home study started. I mean, every little bit adds up.
I've actually heard of throughout the years when families have shared that their employer gives adoption benefits, it usually ranges anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 is the range that I've heard through the years. And military, too, has some benefits as well. So,
see, and that just, again, goes back to don't leave any stone unturned. Just keep looking, because this family I mentioned earlier, I actually had the pleasure of meeting them at one of our outreach conferences that we did in the fall, and I spoke with her. She came back a couple hours later during a meal time and passed by our booth, and she said, while I was in my last class, like her workshop, she said, my husband texted me and said that we got another check in the mail for $600. So somebody that just knew that they were hoping to adopt just donated to their cause. So the money just kept coming in.
Can I just share a website, purecharity. I think it's .com, but Pure Charity, your organization would need to register. If you're not with Lifetime, your organization would need to register with them. But we are registered, so if you're a Lifetime family, obviously you can go on there and set up a profile, and then it's kind of like crowdfunding. Is that the term, Libby? You're more on it than I am. Asking me. Crowdfunding.
You're funny.
Crowdfunding.
I think there's different terms for that.
Yeah, you can crowdsource your funding. But anyway, you can put like a casual video up there, like specifically talking to people to help them understand, why are there fees? You want an adoption professional who is ethical and provides services and support for birth moms. And, you have to pay for services that are going to, be good quality, and for someone to be there around the clock for the birth moms who are calling in requesting help. And many people have a heart for that, as well as when they know that what you're trying to do in growing your family through adoption. So just kind of trying to think along those lines and put together something compelling. And then what you do is you try and just make it go viral, which is like sharing it with your group and then asking them to share it with their group, and they ask them to share it with their group, and that's obviously viral. So Pure Charity is a place that a few of our families are on. They have a profile on.
Right, and I think that is a great question that we could probably even spend a whole webinar on, because we do hear a lot from families that say, why does adoption have fees? Why do I have to pay fees to adopt? And like you said, Kim, it's about services that you need for a safe and successful adoption, not only for the support needed for all these women just researching adoption, but definitely for the women who are choosing adoption as birth mothers, but also for the adoptive parents, to keep educating you, to keep things in order so that legally you're ready to say yes, not just emotionally. But I always think of it as if you were pregnant. I mean, medical costs can get very expensive, but most people would agree that they're necessary. When you need medical attention, you don't think of not paying for qualified professional services to get the help you need. So it's good to keep perspective too, and that's what helps others realize that. Like, we've heard that so many times, Kim. I love that you brought that up, because people don't always understand. A lot of what they hear about sometimes is the old days, with like way old days, maybe even the 1800s old days, but where you basically see a child pass through town as an orphan, and they just sort of take them in and feed them, and then they decide not to send them out on the way. That doesn't happen anymore. Now you need legal help. You need people there to support you and make sure that you're not getting taken advantage of, that you're having a safe opportunity that's going to go smoothly, and that you're doing everything on the up and up so that your child's adoption is permanent, so it's not at risk, so your family is not at risk. Or if cost is an issue, just let us know too, because sometimes we can help you know more about resources in your area, or like we were talking about earlier, just different things that families have done in the past to help make it possible. And it's also okay if you need to take a little time and get some things in order before you're ready to move forward. And for those of you on the call tonight, I know sometimes this time of year emphasizes it, but if you're feeling like, oh, this year is almost over, another year without a child, another year without that extra stocking over the chimney, or, whatever's on your mind, whatever is coming through, to just say, it doesn't matter when it's going to happen. It's going to be amazing when it happens. So if you're getting things together right now, that's still progress. Just because you're not holding your baby yet doesn't mean you're not making progress towards your baby. So just keep taking one step after another and pat yourself on the back. I think, Kim, that it's just amazing that so many people showed up here tonight, and that we can say that they have taken a step in a positive direction towards the baby that they want to add to their family.
Yes, absolutely. Taking one step at a time brings you that much closer, and every day that you wake up in the morning again brings you that much closer to the day your baby comes home to you, as long as you continue to take action steps.
Exactly. And if you're on the call and you're already with Lifetime, and if you're somebody that's saying, we don't have any other action steps to take because we are paper ready and emotionally ready and we're just ready to say yes, then great. Just remind yourself of where you're at and give yourself credit for how far you've gotten, because there's still activity going on even if your hands aren't the ones making it happen right now. That's why you come to Lifetime. You come to Lifetime so that we can make it happen for you.
It's normal to have a period of quiet once you've rushed through and, you've taken care of all the details, like Lizzie was saying, paper ready, profile ready, video is up, you have your home study, you maybe have whatever you're ready to get whatever you've chosen to get ready for the baby in your home. You know, you have a backup plan for who's going to take care of your dog while you're out of town. Everything's ready to go. Then it's okay to just take a breath and just, you know, understand that that's the timing of when your baby comes home is in God's hands. You've done everything possible, and it's normal to have a period of quiet before the answer comes to you as to exactly when and how your baby is going to come to you.
Thank you for saying that, Kim. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and I know that we've run over our hour, and we're just grateful that you hung in there. And we just thank you all for your questions too. I loved people chiming in saying, "Oh, these are good questions." So I'm always encouraged by that because you know we want to be on target for you, and when we're able to talk about these different scenarios, it's impossible to think of every single question that you should ask as you prepare to adopt, and that's why we love these Q&As, is because then it reminds us of information you need, and it helps you know, oh, I never even thought to ask that, or great, I'm going to write that down and get more information. But as a reminder, just please reach out to us if we couldn't get to your question tonight, or if it's something more specific, or if Kim or I typed with you and said, can we connect with you about that one-on-one? Please follow up. Please let us know how we can help. You can always reach us at 1-800-923-6784, or email your coordinator if you have a lifetime coordinator. And if you don't, you can send an email to Kim. I know she'll direct you in the right place, but you can also shoot an email over to adopt@lifetimeadoption.com. And of course, if you want to apply, we would love to even see your application come in before the weekend, because maybe by Christmas we could have more information for you about the next step that would be best for you to pursue. You can apply free online, lifetimeadoption.com/apply. In particular, Kim, I know, I mean, it varies, but just remember that we work nationwide. But if you have any questions about where you live, or if you can work with Lifetime, you can email us, but it doesn't hurt to apply either, because it'll definitely help us learn more about where you live, but also what you're looking for, and we can help you get to the next step that's best for your goals. So,
right. If we see that you're in a state we can't assist with, we're going to just let you know that. So it's not going to do you any harm to have filled it out. And it's actually just really easy. I was just looking at our updated application format, and they've really streamlined it and made it a lot easier than any version of our application we've had before, with the launching of our new version of our website this week. Hooray, party! Yay, we launched our new website.
Yes. Yes. So thank you, everyone. We wish you a very Merry Christmas, and also you can go to adoptionteleconference.com and check out any webinars you may want to catch that you missed or you want to hear again. And we will look forward to coordinating more of these after the new year. And we hope that you will keep in touch and let us know how you're doing and how we can help. So thank you, Kim, for joining us tonight, and we will sign off and meet with you all again very soon.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Good night. 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 Good night.